Hi, everyone. Here we are in CircuitCast again. Today I have Joel Martens as part of my episode in the Entrepreneurs in Hospitality episode segments. Joel is a seasoned entrepreneur, hospitality operator, and business builder. He's got deep roots in agriculture, tourism, and experiential hospitality. From growing up in Saskatchewan on a cattle ranch to scaling Heritage Ranch from $100,000 to over $2 million in annual revenue, Joel has repeatedly built revitalized high-performance operations. His background spans equestrian training, restaurant ownership, tourism development, and media production. This gives him a rare combination of operational depth, creative vision, and execution excellence. Joel, thanks for joining us today. Pleasure to have you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Joel, that's quite the CV, and sounds like quite the journey. Would you mind giving us a bit of a story from Saskatchewan to where you are now? Give us the story.
Well, it's been a big journey. We've been involved in tourism sector and hospitality probably about 30 years out of 60. I've done some other kind of odd jobs and had quite a varied path, but probably my first real introduction to it was at the Columbia Icefields. And I really enjoyed that experience of just being able to be with people. And I was an awkward 20 something at the time and just got engaged while we were up at the Icefields. But that was kind of my introduction to it. And I really enjoyed the people. And they got busloads of people coming in every hour. And you'd take a snow coach full of people onto the glacier and give them a tour.
So were you driving the coaches, running the tours? Tell us a little bit about what you were doing there.
Yeah, I started as a shuttle driver. That's kind of the process. And then they train you to do the tours. And that's what I was working towards because that was the better gratuities and things like that. So it was kind of fun. And then we'd take busloads of people from all nationalities and we'd provide a tour. Sometimes we'd have an interpreter, but it was always fun because he'd drop them off at the turnaround and they'd go for a walk on the ice. And that's when you get to engage with some really unique individuals. And it took me out of my shell.
So that's great. What a great start. I mean, that's a pretty unique experience anywhere in the world, right? This is the Columbia Icefields. So what happened next? Where do we go from there?
I enjoyed the bus driving end of it. So I drove bus for a while from Squamish up to Whistler, had three or four jobs. During the day, I'd work 2 or 3 jobs and then I'd drive the bus back down, carrying workers back into Squamish. Worked in a t-shirt shop, a couple hotels, just filling my day and then go back. So you'd think I'd have made a lot of money during that time, but that wasn't the case. And then we moved to Victoria for a bit. Worked in the t-shirt shop, silk screen and t-shirts, and in the public eye again, right in front of people, and real hand silk screening kind of a thing. And I got into kitchen cabinet sales, did that for a while. Worked for Canadian baby photographers for a little bit. And then we moved to Alberta. So one of the goals of living in Victoria was to learn how to sail, which I did. And I got the opportunity to sail alongside the Pot of Whales and had some really cool sailing experiences. So we moved our sailboat over to Alberta, which was quite a challenge through the mountains. And we got it over into Saskatchewan. And I took it work in Alberta. I did that for a period of time. I think the real transition into full-on entrepreneurship came after that. I spent 10 years starting colts and training horses. That was really my original passion. That's how I grew up, around horses, trained horses for friends and family and for clients in Saskatchewan. And it was like returning to my roots. So I did that for 10 years, trained over 700 horses. A lot of fun, remedial work, really challenging horses. And I started out kind of being the lowest price. So I got the toughest horses. And then as I progressed into my career, I started getting more, better, well-bred horses. But I was always enjoying the colt starting because I just enjoyed riding. And that was the fun part and the challenge where they hadn't been ridden before, and I got them to where they could be ridden. And then moved into Heritage Ranch. That was it was a city-owned property. The city at the time wanted to develop it, and they were quite keen to have something done on this property. It was a bit of a ghost town. Previous operators were doing maybe $100,000 a year in sales, gross sales, with a focus on maybe trail rides and the odd guest corporate event. After that experience, we had the opportunity to bid on a proposal to develop a ranch in the city of Red Deer. It was within the city limits. So it's kind of an interesting project. And so we bid on that and we won. And we came in with the intention of making something kind of major happening. We had a really clear vision of what we wanted to do in 10 years' time, and that was kind of the starting point. And once we had that vision locked down, we really dug in and built it up. It was doing about 100,000 in a year, just with trail rides and different things. And then our goal was to build out the restaurant into a fine dining kind of a facility for couples primarily, and for guests as well coming to the property. So, but our focus was really on relationships and on providing a space for couples to come and have a nice dinner. So that's really the direction we headed. And we developed it into a $2 million operation over the next 10 years, and we worked it for 15 years, and that came to an end just recently. So that kind of wrapped up that time frame. But really good experience.
Yeah, Joel, I'd like to maybe talk about that a little bit. You took on this ranch, relatively modest, and as you mentioned, took the restaurant upscale. Talk to us a little bit about some of the real challenges that you faced along that road. I mean, this is the nitty gritty that people don't see, the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Staffing and learning how to manage staff. Right from the beginning, I was fresh off the back of a horse, and I was trying to figure out how to handle teenagers and adults alike in our staffing process. Having a restaurant there and trail ride operations, carriage rides going, there was a lot of moving parts, and every year it just got busier and busier. So we were constantly developing. And again, the seasonality of the guest ranch business and that whole end of it was tricky, because you'd just wrap up Easter and you'd be into the next one, and you'd be into wedding season, and then, corporate events, and then wedding season and summertime, the events through the summer. And then we go into the fall, we're into Halloween, and, it was just one thing after the next. And Christmas was our biggest season, was Christmas, for sure. That's where our best revenues were. But yeah, it was a good training for me for what I do now. And I look back on it and it's starting to make sense. And that's sometimes the challenge, is how do you make it all make sense?
So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now then. You mentioned that the contract with the ranch has since come to an end, and so you're on to the next thing. So what's that look like?
Well, I'm getting very excited about it. It's like a guest ranch consultant, basically building strategies, going through a 5-step process with potential guest ranch owners and operators, and showing them how they can step by step go through a process that gives them a good foundation for a legacy ranch or agritourism. Those are areas that I'm interested in, based off of what's available at the property and how we can utilize it to make it profitable. I think it's a field that we have a lot of experience, because we really worked with what we had. We were working under the city's umbrella in a way, although they weren't involved in the business. We had their regulations that we had to abide by. So there's some challenges with that. I think,
So, in the interest of that, maybe for people who are thinking about this, or people who might become maybe one day your clientele in your new venture, talk a little bit about, in the thick of it all, when you're bringing in, $2 million a year, running that business at the Heritage Ranch, what does a day in the life of look like for you?
well, I guess it depends on the day of the week. I can tell you one of my most bizarre days was start in the morning with corporate meetings. There were some meetings on the property, so we got them started. I had a kayak trip scheduled for the day, so I took some people out down to the river, and knew I'd have to pick them up in a couple hours. And then I came back, and I believe I had we do a version of Man Tracker, or I don't know if you're familiar with the TV series, but we do a version of that. We call it Ranch Tracker for trademark purposes. And so I did that, or a trail ride. I can't quite remember which it was. And then I came back, and just in time to go and get the people downriver on the kayaks. So jumped in the truck and went down there and brought them back. They had a lunch planned, so I had them back in time for lunch. And that was about noon, and went through the day, maybe a couple more trail rides, I think. And then in the evening, carriage ride or two, for one of our carriage date night packages. So you kind of needed to use a lot of different skills and not wear out and always be in a good mood. So, but I enjoyed that. For me, it was a natural fit, and I just loved the challenge and the timing and the skill sets that were required.
When do you find time to do the business part of the business?
Well, that's $100 question for sure, if not $1 million question. I think that's there. One of my weaknesses at the time was probably not having the SOPs, the standard operating procedures in place. That it would have over time allowed me to delegate some of those things and keep them going. Like, I guess to our credit, we kept them all going. In the background, obviously, there were things that maybe I should have been focused on as well, or in lieu of, and had somebody else running it. So I did quite a bit of hiring in between, and I had my managers put positions from time to time. And then I guess where some of the challenges were there was the seasonality of it. Not so much that I didn't have work for them year round, but everything's changing all the time. And, managers, sometimes they have a more flatline approach, and they want those SOPs in place and they want to follow those, and that's the extent of their job. But when you have an event coming in and restaurant service at the same time, and two sleigh rides going out and a trail ride or wagon ride or whatever in half an hour, all those things I think got overwhelming for them, and sometimes they kind of back down on it. So in the hiring process, I would have been probably more, I'd have to say, critical, I guess, in the hiring process in the early stage, and less critical once they were implemented, if that makes sense.
Sure. So that's actually really a good insight, and I'm probably going to revisit it a little later in the conversation. But I want to move gears a little bit. When you think about the type of ranch or the type of people that would be customers for Joel in your, in sort of going forward, who are they, and how many do you think there are? Where are they?
Of the ranch when it was operating, or my current business?
No, yeah, the customers that would be people who wish to operate a ranch like that.
Yeah. I think people with properties that they've either, there's a bit of a vertical line there, I guess, of people that own properties already and would think of, maybe there's some other ways we can build out some revenue on our property. There's some things we could offer to the public, whatever that looks like for them and what's feasible for them. But there's also people on the horizontal line that would be looking for making that purchase, and they're trying to decide whether they can make the payments or this is a good move for them. They love people and want to do something with people, maybe a little less on the ranching side, but they want to be involved with people, and they just want to make sure that the ducks are in a row before they bite the bullet and write the check for the ranch. But with the long-term focus in both cases, horizontal and vertical, for longevity and a legacy that they can pass on to their kids. If they're going to invest their time and money into growing the business on the ranch, either stream, that it's got a long-term resiliency and profitability. So that's really my focus.
Do you think that there's, in your experience, is there a sort of a minimum size? Is it, if you only have 10 acres, you're never going to be able to make the thing profitable, or, you need to have 100 acres, or you need to have 1,000 acres. Is there anything like that? Or, talk about that a little bit.
That's a great question. I mean, I'd love to work with either. I think that's the diversity of our experience on the small acreages. There's things that can be done, those flashlight Easter egg hunts or whatever you want to look at on a seasonal basis, or year round kind of things that are trail rides or carriage rides and that kind of thing on a slightly bigger property. And then you go to the, 1,000 acre plus property, that opens a whole new world, and it's a different clientele as well. So we get some people staying over and into the overnight kind of packages. There's so many areas right now as well with new innovations for guest housing and overnight housing. I think navigating through the legal and regional laws, I think is a bit of a problem, and that we need to face. And I think generally speaking, it needs to be opened up a bit more and talked about. But I think the long term, I can see, some backing down on some of the legal issues, because tourism and the guest industry is really a growing industry in a lot of provinces. And I think our governments will come on stream. It's just a bit of a learning curve. And neighbors, I mean, that's something else that we can talk to people about, like how are you pitching this to the neighbors? Because if you're coming in with $55 million into a small town, people will be watching what you're doing. So you want to handle that well.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting point, right? Because these are typically going to be rural properties. So they're in communities that are well established in doing things the way that they've been doing things, and it can be pretty disruptive. So addressing your stakeholder community in a meaningful way is probably pretty important.
Yeah, for sure. And the small operators as well. Sometimes they've owned the house for 100 years. It's been in the family, and now they're going to start doing something. The neighbors want to know, and if you bring them in early, it's going to be a lot easier. Show them what you're doing, what your plan is, and then when you execute it, it's like they know what's coming. But if they don't know what's coming, and all of a sudden there's 30 cars coming down the driveway every night, guess what? Going to be raising some eyebrows.
Right, right. Yeah. So, when you think about, you touched on this, the tourism industry is growing, and in this particular segment of the tourism industry, what do you see as sort of the growth path? What's working and not working? Where geographically is it growing? What can you share as insight in that regard?
Well, again, good questions. I think the long term on the luxury kind of ranches, I think is good. I think there's also an opening for the unique experiences. The indigenous kind of stay in a teepee kind of experiences that are lower cost are also quite ripe, and developing those into the story of the region that they're setting up in. People are really starting to care more about where they're going. Think that luxury has a funny connotation, because I think a lot of people going for luxury tourism are often early adapters. So they're people that are okay with a little bit of nuance, and they appreciate the things that are different, the local culture. That's why they're going on a holiday. There's also utilitarian kind of a group that are just going to spend the night and moving on to the next place tomorrow. And that they're not, in my experience, aren't really the demographic we want to market to. And then there's the families that are getting out and trying to save some money and doing something on a bit of a budget, but still want to have a fun experience. And they're kind of the do-it-yourselfers, but they still want to know that the basics are looked after. There's the beds are clean, and the basics are in place. And from a internal, the standard operating procedures are in place.
So during that, you mentioned marketing, and I want to just touch on that. We talked about how these properties are often rural properties, and that means people are traveling some distance to arrive at them. They're not, next to an airport. They're not, in a downtown core typically. So what's the strategy for marketing these properties so that people find them and are attracted to, really that destination type of visit?
Yep. One of the things that we did at the ranch was very successful, and that was something that we incorporate in our marketing plans, is marketing to the local market first. And that local market might mean within 500 kilometers, or it might mean within 100 kilometers, depending on your location. Getting the locals aware. Often they have guests coming to stay with them, and they want to go do something for the day, or they don't have a place for them to stay. So they recommend that they book in here, and then they can spend some time with them there or do some other things in the community. Over time, we were about maybe 7 years in when we decided we had to go to a bigger scale. We were in Red Deer, so we started to market to Calgary and Edmonton, and we were starting to see some results from that, and people were starting to come in from those areas. Then our marketing plan was based a lot on social media initially, and that was very effective for us at the time. It's that landscape seems to be changing a little bit. We launched into YouTube and video a lot, and we really moved our focus into the videos, and that worked excellent for us. The paid promos on YouTube or whichever channel you could get on, those were highly effective for us. Right from somebody traveling into your region, they're on YouTube, obviously they're checking things out. Your ad comes up, 15-20 second ad or a longer one that is entertaining, and you can really make a mark fast. And even though when they would come, they didn't specify that's what they saw, I always had a sense that it was working really, really well, because we'd get busier every time we boosted it, or we give it a good shove.
Interesting.
Yeah, very, very challenging, because you're dealing with people that are from who knows where. So unless you can get to them before they get to you, before they arrive in town, you might have missed them.
Well, you're also marketing potentially two or three different really micro businesses within the bigger business, right? Whether it's a trail riding or the restaurant or the sleigh riding or, what that experience is, right? You have to market all of those because it's a kind of a different crowd, right? A family might do the sleigh ride, but not do the trail ride, right? That
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Seasonally, it's a different crowd as well.
Interesting. So Joel, when you look forward in time, you think about the things that are changing, and you touched on it, right? The effectiveness of social media marketing and the changing dynamics of that. What do you think are in the future going to be the primary drivers of change within your segment of the industry? Is it macroeconomics? Is it technology? Is it people's behaviors? What do you think it is?
Well, probably something from each. People's behaviors certainly plays into it as people look for experiences. I mean, I like to think we were ahead of the curve quite a bit in terms of creating experiences. That was really our focus, was putting these packages together that were really cool, like our carriage. We had a carriage date night package, so they'd have an hour-long carriage ride or half an hour in the winter sleigh ride. And come back to the restaurant, they'd have a five-course dinner, and we supplied the roses and the chocolates and the five-course dinner. The wine was included, and it was an easy package to purchase. I think behaviorally, people appreciated being able to do the one click, make the purchase, and now they're in the moment and they just share the experience, and they're not making all these decisions along the way. I think when people go into a new area as a tourism marketer, I think sometimes, let's say you got a rafting company, and so you're trying to sell them on their rafting trip. That's nice. That's a nice thing to do. But if you can take up their whole day in rafting and then maybe a trail ride and then maybe something else, dinner, a high-end dinner or something, or backcountry dinner, say, now you've got something that's more experiential, and it's a couple different things, and that takes up their day. And I think, when you're in a new area, that's what you want. That's the whole package, the full experience. And what that costs at that point, if you've got your product and your positioning right, the price isn't really as much of an issue. It's like, yeah, okay, so it's $1,000, but look at what we're doing. You know, that's why people go skiing, because they can go ski all day and have all these different experiences on different runs.
Yeah. No, it's a really good take, right? Because, people are driving likely some period of time, a couple hours maybe to get to the location. If they've made that journey, why not keep them there as long as possible? Give them a reason to stay as long as possible, right?
Yeah, if you think of it like you're the tour guide, but you're not present with them the whole time. You've created the envelope, and they're inside that envelope doing all the fun things that they want to do, and it's all packaged up for them. It just takes all the guesswork out of it for them, because you can have a good experience in another town doing this, but then the next experience is substandard. That taints your experience of that community as well.
Okay, so that's the people aspect, and maybe slightly the demographic changing of the types of people that are seeking these experiences. What about other influences, the economics, the world order, all that stuff?
Yeah, well, don't get me started on that, but the technology, I can speak to that a little bit. Utilizing the AI for your marketing and things like that is definitely ahead of the curve still. A lot of people touch on it, but they maybe not utilizing it to its full value at this point. When you're looking for demographics that you can target specifically, running it through an AI program will get you to the people you want to bring in. I think that's important too from both sides. I think the guests, they don't want to be inundated with advertising. It doesn't apply to them before they get there. And yet they also want things that are applicable to them in the moment. I was using the example, like I have no interest in paying anything for a heart surgeon until I need a heart surgeon. And then it wouldn't really matter what the cost was, right? So when a guy needs a date night and he hasn't had a date night for a long time, you've got a package that's just perfect for them for their anniversary, and it's a no-brainer. It's a click, right?
Well, I guess that's kind of to your point though about the heart surgeon thing, right? When you don't need them until you need them, but then
Yeah,
you want to make sure you got the right one too, right? The best
yeah,
one you can find.
yeah. I don't want the cheapest one, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the place to get a discount, right? Yeah. So I guess the point there being, um, that you want to present that level of experience too. When people come, it needs to be, ideally that sort of unique, special, whatever your special language is, it needs to, resonate through the whole business, right? Their whole experience from when they drive up the driveway to when they hit the road on the way back, right?
Yeah, for sure. Trying to think of the gentleman's name. He's a hostage negotiator. Just slipped my mind. His one of the things he kind of mentions is you want people to say that's right, not you're right, but you want them to say that's right, because when they're saying that's right, they're aligning with what you're saying, and you've worded it rightly or correctly to the point where it's something they're going to want to get on board with. So the marketing side, that's something that I look at. What statement can I make where that potential buyer is going, yeah, that's right. You haven't had a date night in over a year and a half. Oh, that's right. Right. You know what I mean? And I know it may be a little bit off what we're talking about, but I think that's the approach you want to take in the hospitality industry in total. You're coming into your guest room, into your room, and everything's kind of really cool. You feel good about what the decision was that you made, and you're kind of agreeing with the whole surroundings that you're in, and it meshes. And that's matching your clients up with the experience for sure.
Joel, this has been a very interesting conversation. We've talked about, humble beginnings up on the Icefields and bus driving from Whistler and I've been moving a boat through the Rockies. We really covered a lot of ground. I mean, literally. And then you've shared some good insight on, the unique aspects of running, a ranch style, or let's call it an acreage style, hospitality business, whether it's a ranch or offering other types of experiences. And those are really helpful. If you had one little gem of knowledge that, you wanted to send out to people who were considering being in the space, maybe looking to acquire a ranch or have acquired a facility and with this in mind and maybe haven't got started yet, what's that, like the one guiding light thing that you would want to say to them?
Well, it's a little bit bigger than that. It's maybe like a pyramid. It's getting that foundation down, doing the groundwork beforehand. We had considerable time to do that. I think when we were taking over the ranch, we had 6 or 8 months or whatever it was till they kind of installed us. Then there's the base picture, and then there's the goal, the general sense that we wanted to get across. My wife and I went for a walk on the property, and we were trying to figure out what's the property about? Like, what is this? It's in this edge of town, 207 acres. People don't know it's here. They hardly use it. But what is it to us? And we couldn't put our finger on it. We were just kind of walking through the park. It was early spring. Then we got back to the truck, and as we got to the truck, we just kind of sat down and, just kind of sat down and had that sigh of relief. It was like, oh, that was really nice. And that's when it hit us both. It was like, yeah, we want to make a place that this is the end result. Whether they come for dinner, they come for a trail ride, when they get in their vehicle and it's all done and they get back in their vehicle, what do they say to each other at that point? I think that was a guiding light for us. We didn't want people getting in their truck and going, oh, that was the worst food I've ever had. Right? Or that was, we wanted them getting in the truck and going, oh, that was amazing. And that was a word we integrated with the staff. We said, when a guest says it's amazing, put a little mark on the wall here, because that's what we're after.
Great. That's actually really great. You had a vision as to what you wanted people to leave with. And you used that to guide the decisions that you made throughout the day-to-day and throughout the planning process, right?
Yeah, that's a very clear way of putting it. Yeah.
Great. Joel, thank you so much for being with us today.
Pleasure.
It's always a pleasure. And sounds like a wonderful life journey you're on.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And I'm looking for ways of making it more accessible. Right now we've got, our packages we offer, but I'd also like to do just a one-on-one educational kind of series for people that are interested in getting started and walk them through the 5-step process and just show them how to do it, ways that without avoiding the mistakes that we made. We made a lot and we learned a lot through each one of those. And I'm 60 now, so I can share just about anything.
Joel, I think
proprietary anymore.
What would be, I think what would be really interesting would be to, you've seen it done on the series on television, but to, circle back in a year or so and just sort of see what's changed, what's different.
Yeah, I'm down for that, for sure.
Consider maybe we'll do a series like this a year or so from now.
Come see us sometime if you're in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Next time I'm driving by, I'll pop in.